On April 13th, 2021, my father died. I mean, I say he died like it was just a random act of the universe, but I mean, it was his own fault. He died of a drug overdose. He had a very bad problem which persisted throughout my entire life, certainly. So when he died, I was upset, but I wasn't exactly surprised. I when I was a kid, he was an alcoholic, and then he got into harder stuff, including meth, and that's eventually what led to his end. That's what led to it. He didn't commit suicide, but at the same time, he kind of did. It was just very gradually and with a series of increasingly poor decisions, and it's so strange, even all this time later, to stop and think that he's dead. He's gone. I'll never see him again. I'll never talk to him again. And I mean, he and I didn't have a great relationship. I think when he died, it had been something like 5 years since I'd even spoken to him. we, eh, I mean, I loved the man, but we just didn't get along. And after a certain point, I couldn't deal with him anymore. And you know, especially when I was a kid, but even later on, it was just hard to even imagine a world where he didn't exist. He was just so central to my life, when I was young, at least, that the idea of him being gone just never even crossed my mind. And even when I got older, and he lived far away, and I didn't interact with him much anymore, he was still a big part of who I was. He was part of the reason I exist and am the way I am. So the idea that one day he would be gone, like, I understood on an intellectual level. I understood, yeah, he's gonna die eventually, but it's still, it was impossible to imagine a world that he wasn't in. And I think it's the same way for a lot of people, really. Like, you know, think of your own life, think of your friends and loved ones and family, and try to imagine your life without some of them. It's probably going to be difficult. Like, there's probably people who you just can't imagine what you'd do without them. But then one day they die, they're gone, and you go to bed and you wake up the next day, and you wake up the day after, and you wake up the day after that, and then one day you wake up and you realize it's been 4 fucking years, and you did move on, and your life did adjust to them not being there anymore, and the rest of the world didn't even give a shit. The rest of the world didn't have to adjust. The rest of the world was exactly the same before and after. No one really wanted to stop and acknowledge how you felt. No one cared. Well, I mean, some people cared. Like, some people who know you care, obviously, but like, the world at large just sort of tells you, okay, get over it, move on. And that is, in a strange way, even harder to deal with. It's even harder to come to terms with that, knowing that that is just how we're all expected to live, because you can't stop the whole world for one person's passing, no matter who it is, no matter who they were or how important they were. My dad wasn't important in the grand scheme of things. He was an unemployed ex-con with a drug problem, but still, that this exact story happens thousands of times a day. Not this exact story, obviously, but just thousands of times a day. People die, and most of the world never even hears about it. They're just gone. And sometimes I stop and realize that, well, that's going to be me. Even though I am a niche internet micro celebrity, I am moderately famous. There are thousands of people who are at least somewhat familiar with me and my work. And even if I die under like really weird circumstances and it makes the news, the rest of the world's just gonna move on. And some people will grieve for a bit, and then one day they'll wake up and realize it's 4 years after I died. And I'll be honest, I don't really know what to do with any of this, but my I don't know. My dad's gone, and I didn't like him. I didn't have a good relationship with him, but he's he's gone.